Picture this. I just got done playing Subnautica at 2:30 in the morning after finishing my finals earlier. And I had the bright idea to make a video about the Brewers. Shocking, I know. Given the time of year and in the spirit of Christmas and Christmas lists, I thought it would be fun if I gave my wish list for how 5 Brewers players can improve in 2023. Now, there's no doubting that the 2022 Brewers took a step back. They went from 95 wins in 2021 to just 86 this year. Christian Yelich still can't hit the ball in the air, Willie and Rowdy became home run or bust, and Hauser and Lauer both took significant steps back. Overall, the offense was roughly the same, but the pitching regressed. They allowed more base runners and were not the rock-solid unit they were expected to be. Whereas the 2021 Brewers might have won a certain game 4-3, the 2022 Brewers would have lost that game 5-4, since the offense couldn't make up for the regression of the pitching. And you have to think the Josh Hader trade is still in the players' minds. The players on my wish list are, as I just mentioned, Adames, Tellez, Yelich, Hauser, and Lauer. Let's start with Willie Adames. In 2021, he was the guy that kickstarted the offense. After being acquired from the Tampa Bay Rays, he was 20% better than the average player by WRC+, and overall was a very valuable player, especially as a shortstop. However, in 2022, things weren't quite as peachy. His WRC+ went down, his walk rate went down, and his on-base percentage was below 300, which is really bad. He did set the Brewers' record for home runs by a shortstop, but it felt somewhat hollow since his approach felt like more or less home run or bust. Some things I think played into this were his numbers against changeups and sliders. Whiffing nearly 40% of the time on both pitches, his saving grace with sliders was that he still did hit them hard. The same could not be said for changeups. He hit changeups hard less than a quarter of the time, and his xWOBA, which stands for expected weighted on base average, was a paltry 185. He does slug well against sliders, but his seeming inability to hit changeups is very concerning. My wish list for Willie Adames is to have a more balanced approach that isn't just home runs. I love that he's a power hitter, but I know he can be more balanced than he was in 2022. The big ingredient in this is to become a guy who
gets on base.
On to the second player on my wish list, Rowdy Tellez. Rowdy became a fan favorite in 2021 with clutch moments aplenty. Rowdy's issue in 2022 was much the same as Willie. Lots of home runs, very boom or bust. But this is not very acceptable from a first baseman. A first baseman is expected to shoulder the load offensively, especially a guy like Tellez who is not a very good defender at first. This means that while his play declined as a whole, yes, but in comparison to the rest of the league, he was about the same. His on-base percentage went down drastically, much like Adames, but I want to make a note that Tellez was incredibly unlucky this year. As noted in an article written by Jack Stern of Brew Crew Ball, Rowdy's batting average on balls in play was just above the Mendoza line, which means he was extremely unlucky. This is due to Rowdy being a lefty pole hitter who is very slow. This means that going against extreme shifts, just about any ball hit to right field would be an out unless it was hit in the right place. If Rowdy were to just repeat the way he played this year in 2023, his numbers would go way up due to less of a shift. But I still wish for Rowdy to improve his on-base percentage by continuing to improve his walk rate and keep on putting the ball in play. The last hitter on my wish list is Christian Yelich. Yelich was not good in 2021. His power was sapped due to nagging back problems, and he hit the ball into the ground over half the time. Remember back in March when I said, you can't hit ground balls more than half the time and expect to have anywhere near a good slugging percentage. And Yelich said, wanna see me do it again? And he did it again even more. That's right, almost 60% of Christian Yelich's batted balls in 2022 were on the ground, which is not a good recipe for success. However, much like Tellez, Yelich is a lefty who will certainly benefit from infield shifts being limited in 2023. My wishes for Christian are for him to hit the ball in the air, to be more aggressive, and take advantage of the limited shift. As shown here, Christian Yelich has bizarrely stopped swinging at first pitches, when swinging at first pitches more often coincided with his MVP caliber years, and I hope he will be more aggressive this upcoming season. On to the first pitcher on my list, Adrian Hauser. In 2021, Hauser was a solid piece of the rotation known for his sinker and getting ground balls. He was also proficient at leaving runners on base, which certainly helped. In 2022, this was all reversed. He got ground balls at a way lower rate, left fewer runners on base, resulting in a higher ERA. In my opinion, Adrian Hauser would be much better if he switched to the four-seam fastball, or, if he wants to stick with a sinker, maybe move to the bullpen. This is because his sinker control is very volatile. Being a starter leads to his success being entirely dependent on whether or not he has the feel for a sinker on a given day. This is not a recipe for success, and I think he should become a four-seam fastballer as a starter or a sinker baller out of the bullpen. The last player on my wish list is Eric Lauer. I became a big fan of Lauer in 2021. His "let that bitch zoom" attitude was admirable, and he was yet another good piece of the Brewers' rotation. In 2022, however, his ERA went up, he allowed more home runs, and his cutter and curveball became much worse pitches. With Lauer, a big part of his problem was his lack of control. I can't count how many times he badly missed his spot on pitches, and the number of home runs reflects this. For my final wish, I wish for Lauer to use his slider more, especially in place of his cutter, which I think he should consider dropping. I also potentially would be in favor of him ditching the curveball, but unless he were to move to the bullpen as a fastball slider pitcher, I would pump the brakes on that idea, as being a starting pitcher with just 2 pitches, since he rarely throws his changeup, would not be a good idea. In conclusion, I hope these players can make strides forward in 2023. I think if each of these guys progress the way that I hope they do, the Brewers will have a very good chance at being a top team in the National League. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed the holiday season.